Hello crafty people, it's Sharon here and I'm very pleased to be participating in the Crafting with All Brands monthly blog hop where lots of my crafty friends are making fabulous videos which you'll be able to see on YouTube. The theme this month is called Winter Wonderland, and I've decided to get out my Lavinia stamps and make a wintry card, which could be Christmassy or could be just a winter card for somebody who perhaps has a winter birthday or somebody who doesn't celebrate Christmas. So this is the kind of card I'm going to make. It's a DL card, and I really like DL cards because you can make them basically out of one sheet of A4 paper. And then just a bit of matting, so they're quite cheap to make in terms of card usage, and you can actually buy DL envelopes on the internet quite easily and cheaply. So this is a really economical way of making cards. Plus, this size of card also works as a small size letter if you're in the UK, and that's always a bonus. So to make my card blank, if I just pull this outwards, I took an A4 piece of card and I measured 20 centimetres from top to bottom. Let me just zoom out a bit so you can see. So I started off with an A4 piece, which is sort of this wide, measured 20 centimetres across and cut down, and then scored at 10 centimetres to create my card blank. I then had a little piece of paper of card left over here, and I just trimmed that down to make this topper here. I measured 9 centimetres across and 20 centimetres down. And finally, for my matten layer, I measured 9.5 centimetres across, 20.5 centimetres down. And when you put that all together, it makes a perfectly sized DL card. So I've already done my cutting, so I'm going to put this aside for a moment and we can get started. So here's my piece of blank card, and the first thing I'm going to do is create a little bit of a frosty background, and I'm using a Lavinia stencil which looks like this. It's meant to be leaves or flowers or something, but I feel like it's got that kind of a frosty feel to it, so I'm going to use that to create something, and you'll see that it's got this nice sort of feathered edge on it, so you can use that to sort of create a pattern if you so wish. So I'm just going to place that down. I'm going to zoom back in before we begin. Hopefully you can see that better. So I am using distress inks for my background today, and I've chosen to use Salvage Patina because it's a nice frosty blue. So what I'm going to do is pick up some of that on my blending brush. On this occasion I'm using a round flat one, so I've got a really soft blend. I'm just going to pick some up. I'm dabbing it away to the side because I don't want to put too much down at once, but it really doesn't make too much of a difference because it's just going to be in the background. So I'm gently going over, holding my stencil in place. If you've got magnets or tape, you can use that if you prefer, but just for speed I'm going to just go for it. And to be honest, if this moves a little bit, it doesn't matter because it's a very sort of random effect. It doesn't have to be pristine, and you can see I'm just going around. I did move it there just a little bit, lining it up roughly, and I'm just applying my ink wherever I feel like it. You could do this in a lilac colour, you could do it in a grey, you could do it any colour you want really. So I'm just doing this. It's not smooth blending, some bits are lighter, some bits are darker, and that gives a sort of ethereal effect, I would say. So I'm just coming over here, sorry my hand's in the way, but I'm just holding my stencil down. So I haven't covered all of the card, but I've made a random sort of pattern, and hopefully you can start to see that now on the corner there. So before I go any further, I'm just going to do a quick clean up because I don't want to get ink over my white card, so I'm just using a cloth. In case you're wondering, this cloth is fabulous. I got it from Polka Doodles. It's a weird spongy kind of thing. When you wet it and wring it out, it's not soaking wet, but it's really good at picking up ink, cleaning stencils without breaking them, that kind of thing. So that's a top tip from me. And now we're ready to go back to our stamping. So I'm going to just get my stamping platform out ready, and for the stamping portion I'm going to use my VersaFine Claire inks. So I'm just going to position my piece of card on here, and the first stamp I'm going to use is this one, which is one of my favourites. It's a go-to for me from Lavinia, and it's called Floral Wreath. There we go, you can just see it up there. And this has this beautiful sort of berry wreath on it. So I'm going to use that. I'm just going to peel it away, and I'm going to stick it on the bottom of my card. And you can see what I'm aiming for is I'm going to sort of make a backward S shape, I guess you might say. So I'm just putting that in position where I think it would be nice. It doesn't have to go all the way up to the edge. And then I'm just going to secure that in place. And the ink I'm going to use to stamp this is a VersaFine one, Shady Lane. So you won't be able to see this because I need to just take off camera a second while I stamp. But I'm going to be doing light tapping motions all over my stamp just to get it nicely covered in ink. And then I'm going to bring my platform down, and of course you could do this with a stamping block if you feel confident to do so. I just kind of like using a stamping platform, so it gives you a second chance if you don't quite get a good stamp. And the thing with VersaFine is always to leave it for a second, give it gentle presses to let that ink absorb into the paper. So let's see what we've got. There we go, a beautiful stamp. Now at this point I can take my acetate sheet and just work out where I want to position my second archway. I could have done that before I stamped, really, that's the best idea, but everyone will come out a little bit different. So this one's going to have a little bit of a gap in the middle here. So I'm just going to grab my cloth and give my ink pad a little clean, my stamp, and you can see that's sort of coming off really well. And just to be on the safe side, I'm just going to quickly move my card and give this a little blot on my scrap paper underneath. Because when I'm positioning my stamp the next time, I don't want to create a shadow from residual ink, so it's a good practice to do that, and it saves a little upset if you just need to move your stamp or you don't quite put it down properly. Okay, so here goes with stamp impression number 2. So I'm just moving it around a bit to see what I like. I'm actually going to tip it around and separate those buds or berries a little bit, and then we repeat the same process. So pick up the stamp, ink it up, and press down. And I'll just leave that ink to settle for a second. Doesn't matter too much with this one because it's kind of a bit sketchy anyway. And there we have our archway. So I'm going to just quickly wipe off my stamp again. It's a good idea with VersaFine. It will stain a bit, but it's easier to get off if you take it off straight away, I find. So that's getting rid of that for a moment. And we're going to come back to that stamp set in a little while. The next thing I'm going to do is get my little character, which is this fox here. And this comes from a lovely set called Fox Set 1. And I'm going to stamp him in black. So moving my things around, the idea is I want to have him sitting looking at something dangling from above. So I'm going to just put him in place and make sure he's sort of sitting straight. Move my magnets around a bit just to secure my card. Perhaps put one over here. And pick up Mr. Fox. And this time with the VersaFine Claire Nocturne, I'm going to stamp him all over and give him a really good tap all over to get plenty of ink on there, because it's a solid stamp, so we want to get it as black as possible. And give him a press down. I'm just going to leave him to settle for a second. See what he's come out like. There we go. And what I love about these stamps is look at the tiny detail of the hair that you get. It's really amazing. I never get tired of these stamps. So I'm just going to give him a wipe off again, and that's him done. And next I'm going to position a sentiment. And now for sentiments I don't always use the same brand. In this case I've got one that says Winter Wishes, and it comes from Mama Makes. Now I have to say, full disclosure, this is quite an old stamp set, so I don't know if they do it anymore, but if you go to Mama Makes website you might be able to find this or something similar, or just use something that's in your own stash. It's all good. So I'm just going to grab that out quickly. And I'm going to line that up in the opposite corner. Pick it up once again. And using my black Nocturne ink, I'm going to stamp that. And for sentiments I always use VersaFine, again because it gives a lovely crisp outline. It doesn't bleed. And you can really see the sentiment clearly and all the little details. So I'm just giving that a press. And there we have our beautiful Winter Wishes sentiment. Okay, so that's the basic parts done. Now I'm just going to fill out this wavy wreath a little bit, and to do that I'm going to use a green. Oh, actually before I do that I want to put my little dangly embellishment in. So I'm just grabbing it out. I have got these fabulous little stamps which really are, I use them a lot. And they're just little mystical dangly fairy things. They actually go the other way, they go that way. So they come in a set of 2. I'm picking up the smallest one, and I have to admit this has lost a bit of its stickiness on the back, so I need to give it a little wash with soapy water, but fingers crossed it's going to work. I'm going to use a small, no actually I'm not, I'm going to just position it here because I'm not trusting it to stick properly. I'm going to put it somewhere where I think my fox will be looking at it. I think he's going to be looking at it right close by. Or maybe I'll do it a bit further away, as if it's dangling in front of a berry. Now, it has got a little stem on it, but we can actually add to that. So, decisions. I'm going to put it down here. There we go. So it's almost touching his nose. And again, I'm going back with my VersaFine Clair in black. Just going to give that a little stamp. And press and hold for a second. And there we have our little dangly mysterious fairy house. Or if you've got a bauble, you could put that there, or bell. If you want to make it more Christmassy, you've got all of those options. I just put it back because these are precious to me and they're tiny, so I really don't want to lose them, especially as one of them is not being very sticky at the moment. So bear with me. Okay, so sorry, back to where we were before. I'm going to add a little bit of extra oomph to my my wreath. I don't know if you call it that because it's not round, but or swag, that's what it is, isn't it? Now I don't need my magnets anymore, so I'm just going to get those out of the way. And I've picked up a small stamping block, and I've picked up the little branchy thing that comes in with that floral with that wreath, with this. So again, it's not an extra stamp set, it's something that's already there. I'm going to get a bit of scrap paper because what I'm going to do is some second generation stamping. So just bear with while I just get a bit of scrap and put it to the side. So really what I'm going to actually, I'll put it here so that you can see what's going on. I've got my VersaFine Clair in Shady Lane, and I'm going to stamp my little embellishments, but I'm going to use second generation stamping. And what that means is that I take my stamp and ink it up, and then I stamp off once onto scrap paper, and then I stamp onto my image. And what I'm doing is just going around adding extra foliage, and I'm not being all that careful about where I'm putting it, but I am sort of twisting and turning. And what you'll see is it gives a more three-dimensional effect, because it looks like these are in the background because they're paler. And it's up to you how much of this you put in. You can just do a tiny amount, or you can really go to town and you can add other stamps that you might have, berries or what have you. So I've stamped in a wreath around. Hopefully, I hope that didn't go off screen. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, I think. And then I'm going to come the other way, following the flow of these swags. So I'm just going from right to left now. I'm trying a different orientation on my phone. I usually do it long ways rather than width ways. You have to let me know what you think about it. It's a case of getting used to working at a different angle, I think, and positioning things in different places, which is a bit more challenging than I thought. Right, there we go. So I've stamped all of these little things, and you'll see they're not perfectly even. Some of the leaves have come out lighter, some darker. And we kind of actually want that, because we don't want it to look flat. We want it to look like there some things are behind the others, and there's, you know, dimension and movement. So on this occasion we don't really want a perfect stamp, which is excellent. Okay, so the last thing I want to do before we do the colouring portion is to ground our fox. At the moment he's floating in the air. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get rid of my stamping platform because I don't need that anymore. I have a trusty piece of ripped up card, and let's zoom in again. As you can see, it's been used many times before, and I've picked another distress ink, which is weathered wood. And I've got a tiny little blending brush with me as well, which happens to be a Lavinia one, but you could use anything that you've got. So to ground him, we want it to appear that the ground is coming, he's sitting on the ground, not floating above it. So I'm going to take my piece of card and I'm going to line it up just above his bottom, so that his actually appears to be sitting and there's more ground behind him. Then I'm going to take my brush, dip it in my ink pad and dab a bit off, because I'm just going to go in very lightly to start with, because what you can do is actually build this up. Because this is a smallish brush, it doesn't take too much ink, which is really nice. It means you can get a bit more of a controlled and detailed kind of look. And what I've also done is I've just scribbled a little bit to the side here, so it's almost as if he's casting a shadow while he's sitting there. Now I'm going to carefully lift that up, and look at that, hey presto, you can see suddenly he's sitting on the ground. I may just go in a little bit more on the top there, just to emphasize that. And you can do some like random scribbling around the bottom just to give a little bit of atmosphere on the snowy ground. And there we have him sitting rather than floating. It's really as simple as that. And now finally we're going to go on to the colouring part, and this is really very simple. It's quite magical to do. I've picked a couple of watercolour pencils. In this case they're Derwent Inktense, and I want to create berries. So I have got a sort of burgundy red colour, it's called Fuchsia 0700, and I've got Tangerine 0300. The reason why I have got an orange colour is if you put orange underneath a red, it kind of gives it a little bit of a glow. So it looks more three-dimensional and a little bit sort of as if it's got a bit of a natural earthy shine to it rather than looking flat. So that's a little trick. An orange or a yellow underneath a red will give you that kind of feeling of light shining and glowing on there. Now I'm going to really zoom in just for a minute. Oops, wrong way. Excuse me while I just have my total amateur moment, so that we can get in and see what's going on, because this is really not complicated at all, but it's going to bring this card to life. So taking my two pencils, two colours only, I'm going to take a little bit of orange and scribble that somewhere where I think there'd be a light area, and then I'm going to go round the edge of my berry with my darker red pencil, and you just scribble it in. It doesn't have to be perfect, and I might do some on the bottom here as well. And I'm going over the green that I stamped. You can do that too, no problem at all. Now you can do this one at a time, or you can go ahead and colour everything and then go in with your water brush. So I'm just going to do a couple to start with to demonstrate. and then we'll go ahead and finish all the rest of them. It's ever so quick to do. So I've got my water just off camera, and I've got a little cloth here which I'm going to use to take the excess water off my brush. So I'm dipping my paintbrush into the water and just dabbing off my excess, and then I'm going to just start working in circular motions, and I'm actually starting from my dark and going into the light orange colour because I want to just get the red covering the orange. And I don't even need to clean my brush. I'm just going to keep going, and you can bring that out, re-wetting your brush if you need to. And once you activate these with water, the colours just come to life really. It's quite amazing. Now you can either leave a little white area in the middle, or you can go all the way across. But you'll see there suddenly we've got a pop of colour. So I'm going to now go ahead and colour the rest of mine in, because they're pencils, you could colour this today and come back to it in 3 days time, and when you apply water that colour would still move. So you're not under any pressure to worry about you know, your pigment drying out, or you know, you can go and answer the phone, you can go off and have a cup of tea, and you'll come back and it will just work just the same. So when you've got lots of little bits like this, it's really good to just get all the colouring done and then do watering. It's almost like the old magic colouring books. If you're old enough like me, you'll remember those as a kid, where they were blank pages and you added water and colour would magically appear. Well, this is about as close as it gets to that, I think. It's really rewarding. And you know, I have made this particular design of card in the past, and I did do one which was completely in shades of purple, so it was kind of monochrome, and that came out really nicely. It was exactly the same sort of design. I just changed my ink colours and obviously my my pencils. But it was such a lovely result. So I've also coloured my little dangly house there, because I want to get a little bit of a hue on there. Okay. And then we just carry on. So I'll apply the water to these quickly so that you can get to see the process again, and then I'll off camera just finish them off quickly. So I'm not being careful, I'm just applying the water and spreading around, and even on that dark green there you can see it gives it a little hint of colour. When the ink stops moving, or the pencil stops moving around for you, all that means is it's time to add a little bit of extra water. So you just dip in, dab off. You'd only want a slightly damp brush, you don't want too much water on there, otherwise it will water out the colour. Okay, so there we've got the start of our wreath. I'm just going to pause for a second and finish those off because I think you've got the idea, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I'm back having finished my colouring. As you can see, I've done my wreath all the way across. It's really fun to do and relaxing, something you can do in front of the telly. So you could prepare loads of these and then just do your colouring in the evening or something when you've got 5 minutes. The next thing we're going to do is mount up our card, and then we're going to add the finishing touches. So I've got a piece of card I've pre-cut here. I used a pink one on my previous sample, and this one I'm going to go with the green to pick up my Shady Lane ink pad. So we're just going to use some, in my case I prefer a bit of wet glue because it gives a bit of wiggle room. And I'm just going to apply my glue. I'm using Pin Flare. I really like this glue. When it dries it doesn't seem to buckle, which can happen sometimes, and apparently that's because although it's a wet glue it has a low water content, so when it dries it doesn't sort of shrink so much. So there we go. And if you're interested, the card that I've used to back these up, it's a glossy card, and it's come from Crafter's Companion. No, sorry, not Crafter's Companion, Carnation Crafts. And I'll just check the name of the pack. It's called Perfect Papers, A Christmas Eve, and it has 48 sheets in 6 colours, and it really is one of my go-to packs. So sorry about that rustling there. You can buy those at Carnation Crafts, and I believe they keep it in stock all the time, so it's one of those that you can go back to and get again and again. So going back to my pre-prepared DL card, I'm going to do the same thing again and just mount it. And there we go. I'm just going to hold that down to let that settle for a second. And our card is pretty much done. But what we can do is just add a little bit of extra embellishment just to lift it a little bit. So I've picked a white gel pen. This one is a Uniball Signo. And all I'm going to do is add some little flashes of light. Excuse me, sorry. Here and there. You need to wait till your ink has dried before you do this, otherwise it will absorb into the colour and go pinky rather than white. So I'm just adding little dashes here and there to indicate that the light's shining, and I'm not being scientific or precise about it, I'm just putting it where I feel like it might look nice. And it just adds that little bit of extra lift. There we go. And finally I'm going to get a glitter pot. I can't think what you call it, like stickles, and I'm going to just add some little dots of glitter here and there which you won't see very well on here, but when the recipient picks it up they'll get little sparkles of glitter. So again, I'm not being careful, I'm just squeezing my tube and dabbing it anywhere. And this one is a clear sparkle one, but of course you could use a green or a pink or blue, whatever you like. And that finishes the card. So if I just bring that back into shot, that's the one we've made just now. This is the one I showed you earlier. So they come out similar but not exactly the same, which is really nice. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. If you like what you see and you'd like to see more paper crafting demos, you can find me on my YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button and you'll see lots of videos that I've done in the past, and also any new ones that come up. So thanks for joining me. I hope you'll visit my other crafting friends who are also doing this blog hop, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, bye.